All right. So thank you for the invitation to join a spectacular lineup. Always wonderful to be in Southern California. Home for me is Brooklyn, New York. And I'm not sure how many of you are following what's happening in Brooklyn today, but a lot of changes. I mean, the maker machine movement that started in Brooklyn, there's a lot of stuff happening. A lot of 29-year-olds with food carts, a lot of crazy stuff. Lots has changed. But there's one thing that Brooklyn that hasn't changed, and that's how we walk around and we greet each other, right? There's no hello, it's how you doing. So, how you doing, Seema? How you doing? There we go. The right response on how you doing is how you doing. How you doing, right? This is part of a cultural ambassador project for people that leave Brooklyn. Standard warm up, try to warm up the crowd a little bit. It can completely fall flat. I was in Texas. It was a bunch of library folks do a lot of different audiences in my world. And I was doing this, how you doing? And I had lived in Texas, right? I know the whole routine. I was going to work in a y'all and how you doing and get them jazzed. And it was just dead silent. They kept on saying hello, hello. And then finally in the silence, this woman, silver hair, goes, "You talking to me?" Saved the day, saved the day. So watch yourself if you're a guy from Brooklyn back in Texas. So we're going to walk through 3 stages here. We're going to first have a conversation, give you a chance to tell me and kind of share amongst yourselves what you think is likely to change over the next 10 years compared to the previous 10 years, right? So kind of get a sense of how much change we think is likely to happen. Then we're going to play a game called In the News, where I'll read off 3 stories, and your job is going to tell me whether or not you think those stories are true or if I'm lying through my teeth. Then we're going to look at how people that deal with long-term change approach market transitions, incremental and disruptive innovations. And then we're going to focus on product and culture strategies that you as a industry and community can focus on. So that's the game plan. You're going to hear a lot from everyone else here up front about what's changing in the world. I wanted to give a chance to start off the day by asking the audience, what you all think is likely to change. So very quickly in your head, go back over the past 10 years, right? And start off with that global lens and think about how much changed in the world since 2004 or 2000, whatever, just kind of the last 10, 15 years. And then kind of bring it down to the U.S., North America, down to communities and the markets that you serve, down to the automotive, transportation industry, and then down to your organization, right? That's X amount of change that has occurred. Now, I want you to very quickly just imagine how much change is likely to happen over the next 10 years, right? Again, at that global stage, down to your own team and organization. So I want you to give me your hands up if you think that we're likely to see more change in the next 10 years than the last 10 years. And I just want to see those hands up. I want to go back to pom-pom squad. I want to see some jazz hands, right? I want to see those fingers moving. I want to see both hands up because it's going to help me see. Right, so hands up, more change, right? Oh, you guys there's Seema, you got to do the jazz hands, guys. No bending of the wrist, no bending the wrist. Excellent. So hands down, just fingers, guys. All right, so for folks that had their hands down, I'm just going to speak on your behalf, right? Because I think it's a kind of clear case. The assumptions that you're going to hold then are, of course, there's going to be change, right? There's going to be change over the next year, the next 10 years. But we're not likely to see in the next decade the same type of change, like the emergence of China and India and Brazil. We're not going to see explosions in mobile technology and wireless. We're not likely to see the same changes from the millennials going into their adult years. So there's going to be change, but it won't be as dramatic, right? But most of you had your hands up. So I want to get a sense from you now, what is going to lead to that change? What are the things that are likely to bring that change? And I'm going to repeat it back for the camera here. So localization is a big word, right? It's kind of that, and there's movement everywhere towards localization of skills. We can throw in personalization, the modification mindset, still niche, not so mainstream. But there are some signals that suggest that it's becoming more mainstream. Fantastic. So one of the things we're going to look at here is how your community can help to align its brand and what you do with that maker, that design maker movement that we see in the world. So big change there. Please. So consumer demand is pent up. There's always a lag, right? So powerful OEs, they're making these changes. Aftermarket's lagging behind. They might not feel comfortable. Lots of uncertainty there, but that gap might be closed, and the demand is going to continue to grow. You all step in. So that's likely to bring change. What else?
Consumer definition of value.
Consumer definition of value. First, what's value?
Value is what does this do for me?
Okay.
And why would I want it?
So value is what does this do for me? Why would I want it?
Right.
The corporate definition is going to be benefit over price, right? In like the literal terms, like what does it do for me? And the desire for more value in our vehicle and transportation experiences is increasing, likely to bring a lot of change. Okay, so what we do is not as relevant as what it used to be. The consumer is changing, right? And it's been happening for a while, but more empowered. And the metrics, the indicators we use to measure what they're doing, why they're doing it, are becoming more nuanced, more broadly defined, right? So value itself, that definition absolutely has changed. Please. Great. So regulations, regulatory frameworks, emissions is a great example, have shaped innovation, right? Not consumer demand, right? It's kind of if you would ask them what they wanted, they would have wanted a faster horse, right? That's been the story of innovation today, and your thinking is that this industry is going to start to focus back on the consumer, and the consumer is going to push us. Very likely. Very likely. Yeah. Hold hands. You're going to hold hands.
I'll tell you what I fear is going to happen.
Great. A fear.
I fear that they're going to make a couple self-driving vehicles.
Yep.
Realize how safe they are.
Yeah.
And not allow us to drive our own vehicles.
Yeah. So a concern is self-driving cars kind of happen, right? And we're going to look at this. And then there becomes a law that says you can't drive your car, right? And people are storming the Capitol, right? But that is an absolute wild card possibility, right? Not in any near term, but potential long term. So particularly with the millennials, Generation Y, freedom is the phone, right? Freedom is the phone. And that has really, I think, delayed the engagement of that generation in your world of personalization and modification, style of vehicles, maybe a decade, right? So just a couple more. Yep. So we're becoming less connected to the mechanical aspects of the car, right? And this is assumptions that probably most of us hold in this room, right? A vehicle is a mechanical device. And that assumption, that's in the middle of your heart. And you've got all these changes coming around, going drive-by-wire and all these systems. You're going, no. So this mechanical vehicle set of assumptions is being tested, and do we fight it? Do we promote it? Do we reinvent it? Do we move to the next thing? That's going to be a big strategic question. So the news story is just a couple days ago, right? The Toyota is kind of going back on some robotic processes, bringing back into the manufacturer. I'm going to draw just a bridge between you guys right here. This manufacturing itself is changing, and it is becoming, in the highest value format, more like craft, more high quality. At the same time, you've got a whole bunch of crap at the bottom of the market, and that's going to grow too. But over time, where we see kind of more affluent markets, and everyone follows that pattern, we're seeing this shift towards improved quality. And the ability, the sensing devices to ensure that quality are also expanding, right? So we can know actual quality. Please. Love it. So I gave him $20 before this to say that. So demographics, 50 is the new 40, right? But three demographic transitions, right? Academically trained futurists, they will always focus on people. Big demographic transitions when large groups of people go through big life stage or lifestyle shifts. First one is the aging of the baby boomers, right? Or as some people in my audience like to say, the baby boomers are dying off. That's not going to happen, right? They're going into a later stage of their life, and they are going to want to thrive. They're going to want to keep their mobility and their freedom despite any changes in their life. right? So that's a big transition, aging of boomers. Then I'll get you in 1 second, the family formation years of the millennial generation. So it's not those Generation Y kids, those are the 1980 to 2000 born. That's not them in college or as young kids, it's their parents. The family formation years. And then the third demographic transition is urbanization. We are an urban, and urban is metro-urban, it's not always high density. We are an urban planet. We are an urban planet. And really, suburbanization is what drove the automotive industry over the past 60 years. And now we're moving back into the city. So solutions from the mobility sector for urban environments is going to drive innovation. So 3 big transitions in demographics. Healthcare. Yep. So healthcare and wellness. And how does that play into your world? Right? Active transportation is that, right? So more walking, etc. All right, one more. So we used to have disposable income between that 60 and 24-year-old market, and now it's I'm living at home with mom and dad, right? Yep. So and the erosion of the middle class and consumer spending. Really, what drives economies, everyone, is this notion of a demographic dividend. Demographic dividend is when you have, again, large populations, they grow up, they're educated, trained, they're in the workforce, and they get the biggest paychecks of their life. We boomed in the 1990s into 2005 because the baby boomer population was making more money than they'd ever made before. That was the minivan to SUV, from the little house to the McMansion. That was driven by the demographic dividend, the payout of that generation and all of their disposable income. And now they're looking at living another 40 years and they're looking at their assets and they're going, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? So we're waiting for the millennial generation demographic dividend, but that's not going to come until 2025, 2035. So the disposable income of the young market, also for the family market, much more constrained, right? Happy news. Happy news. We want to see the positive in all this, but you've got a lot of constraints that you've surfaced. So let's play a game called In the News. Again, jazz hands is my thing, guys. It's kind of like a personal brand, better or worse, right? It works well sometimes with the transportation engineer folks. Doesn't always work with the librarians, but I enjoy it. That's going to be your true, right? And if you're false, you just kind of close your arms like you're not having a good time, right? So true is hands up. If the story is true, arms folded is false. So the first one comes out of Germany. Obviously, the engineering talent in Germany is very strong. They're taking a lot of leadership in the world of active assist vehicles. So the adaptive cruise control, the brake if the human doesn't respond to the steering wheel jiggling, and then autonomous vehicles. Right? We know this world. The true false here is beginning in 2018. Will German citizens be able to get captain licenses to operate these vehicles? So they will have to pass and demonstrate a series of tests able to operate more sophisticated active assist and autonomous vehicles. So is Germany now making a captain driver's license? Give me your hands up, jazz hands. Holy moly, guys. Wow. You know what I usually do here? I usually say, everyone look at the people with their hands up. They're right. They're the visionaries and they're wrong. And everyone laughs. But you guys ruined that punchline. You completely ruined my go-to punchline. You're well read. This one's false. This one's false. The question is whether or not it's true. Will be true, right? The age of autonomous vehicles is the big, great next story, right? It is. And, better for worse, right? And you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. It is the big story. But for the next 10 to 15 years, we only need to focus on the transition. And the transition is largely focused around active assist vehicles, right? Vehicles that'll brake if you don't, vehicles that can lock into a road platoon, and you don't stop when you're going in on the morning commute, right? Active assist is going to be the set of technologies that I think will drive this notion of captain thinking. So a driver is just looking ahead. Maybe they're looking at their speed, maybe they're not. And that's about it. They're looking at like 3 indicators, right? A captain is sitting there looking at a map, a heat map of all the flows of traffic, and they're looking at different decisions, and they're doing calculations and running their data dashboard, and they're checking their diagnostics on their vehicles that are integrated into your parts. They're thinking like a pilot at a higher order level of processing. This is what we want. We want captain culture. We want captain culture. And I'll walk you through why in a little bit. But that's kind of my thesis here is we want captain culture. We don't want just the same old driver culture that's been around, right? So what's on the screen right here? Google Glass. So folks that don't know, Google Glass is a wearable technology. And when you have it on and you kind of look forward, it appears as though there's like a 50-inch screen in the upper right side and it's displaying information, right? Main line of sight is good. Look just slightly up to the right, you see information as you see here. The true-false story here now is, and this is a pilot from your neck of the woods, is a San Francisco Goodyear tire store now requiring its technicians to wear Google Glass on inspection and installation. And then they provide for quality control and compliance, copies as needed to insurers, etc. So, hands up, this is true. Little good in the back, good jazz hands. You guys are the toughest crowd I've ever had on the In the News game. I'm never going to use it at SEMA again. This one's false. This one's false. But again, you just have to think to yourself, when is it likely to be true? What's our orientation towards technology now and innovation? The phone, right? We think about the phone, and this is everything, right? And my son, my 3-year-old, and when he's a teenager, he's going to say, "Hey, Dad, tell me about the time when people used to walk around like this. Tell me about the time when you used to type your text in. Oh, I love that. It's so funny," right? And he's going to crack up and look at us with this bewildered look, the same way we look at people that sat around looking at the radio. Right? Now, will wearable technologies go mainstream? Who knows? I think they will. I really think they will. Everyone said they wouldn't get a cell phone, right, in the 90s. Whether they go mainstream in the public sphere, who cares? They're going to come to work. They're going to come to work. And they're likely to come to work in places where safety and compliance and training are essential. So how do we imagine equipping our teams with these types of devices? And if they're creating a training experience for someone else, great. If they get stuck on a problem, they just patch in their colleague who might be in another city. And that colleague can see what's going on and they can assist, right? Could it be used to empower customers that are doing it on their own, using our products, glass application? So how do we think about new types of technologies that assist in workflow? Okay, last one. I'm going to get you guys on this one. True, false on this one is the Manufacturing Institute, which is a real organization, are they working with Mozilla, which is an open web organization? They're behind the Firefox browser. On a set of badges. These are micro-credentials. Think Boy Scout, Girl Scout badges, right? I've demonstrated a skill, I get a badge. Are they working with Mozilla to create badges for skills learned by individuals, outside of formal vocational schools for the 21st century work environment? Last chance, hands up. See, and then the one I make true is true. The one I make true is true. So this one is true. So badges are a form of micro-credentials. And the case for badges is that, look, we come out of these formal education environments, these formal vocational environments, where you've got one certificate, right? You did 3 years, 16 weeks, you get one certificate. And really what we need is to have a better sense of the individual capacity and skill level of a set of very particular things. So this breaking down of skill processes into micro-credential formats is something that HR, talent, learning and development groups around different industries are looking at as potential solutions. So, there are other people that say, we don't need your stinking badges, right? And they think badges are a bunch of crap. Whether or not it's badges or not, I think this notion of micro-credentialing is going to occur, and we need to think about it in terms of understanding our own workforce capacity, the workforce capacity of our partners, and then we could also imagine a world in which we've got customers that install our products where we reinforce that bond with badges. Hey, you did this install, you got it. You know, we're recognizing your skills. Great. Great. So that, again, that's self-organizing, kind of learning communities. You know, badges will be on one element, but it's a way of, you know, people manage their profiles these days in a different way, right? Okay, excellent. So I'm going to move forward here, probably about 20 minutes, and then we'll go into Q&A. My background. So I'm an academically trained futurist. I attended a program at the University of Houston, which is a futurist studies program, right? And it was born in the 1970s out of a culture in Houston that was shaped by NASA and the hydrocarbon industry. So both of those sectors needed to develop a more structured and disciplined way of thinking about long-term change. The other program in future studies in the U.S. is in Hawaii, so judge me now. I picked Houston over Hawaii, right? Though I love Houston. Future studies is rooted in the study of social change. And what I do professionally is I do speaking and leadership workshops, I do consulting across a pretty wide range of industries, but really focus my subject matter expertise on infrastructure for energy and transportation. So within the automotive world, or transportation world, I work with state DOTs from Texas to Oregon to Kansas, ASME, ACEC, design build groups, safety systems in Takata, Goodyear Tire on the future of sensing tires. So I have a kind of a wide range, but I'm not an auto parts person, right? I'm not a car person as much as I am large system of transportation person. So I'm kind of a friendly outsider to your world. And one of the things that futurists do when they work with companies and organizations is they use just very simple frameworks. And one of them is called 4 Futures. And what it allows us to do is to imagine a world, let's say 10, 15 years from now, and say, you know, there are 4 potential outcomes. One is continued growth. This is the world where we've got the wind behind us. You know, sails are open wide and we're just propelling forward. It's great, right? Sales are up, margins are good, everything's good. Then there's the discipline-constrained world, right? This is if you're Microsoft and you're thinking, oh my goodness, our operating system sales are gone. We're not going away, but it's going to be a constrained future. I'm Peabody, I'm a coal company. Coal's not going away, but it's a more constrained regulatory environment looking forward, right? Then there's the transformed world. This is where you look around and you're not doing the thing that you used to do. You do something different. So IBM went from selling hardware to selling software solutions, right? Pfizer went from an organization that was built off of chemical engineering talent to biological engineering talent. Chemical to bio. That's the transformed world. Then there's the decline collapse. This is where, you know, the BlackBerries and the Kodaks, they look at the world and their relevance becomes less and less important. So, this is a safe space, right? But I do want to get a sense from you where you think we stand. So, last chance for your jazz hands. How many people think the most likely future for, you know, the aftermarket accessory world is continued growth? Things are going to be better and great. 1 or 2 hands up. Discipline constrained. All right, well done. Jazz hands are fading. Transformed. Excellent. And then decline collapse. All right. I usually don't do that one, but you guys killed me on that in the news thing, so I wanted to see if I could get you back. Disciplined and constrained are almost universally the 2 biggest vote getters. And the movement from disciplined, constrained into transformed is like 2 degrees. You don't go from continued growth to transformed, right? You change when you have to. So I would say that both of those things are true. You actually have 2 futures that are going to evolve in parallel. Large part of your business, your legacy business, is going to be growing. Some of those things will be constrained. And if we're smart about it, we can disrupt ourselves and invest in new types of products and services that signal the transformed world, right? So I think you can run both paths. So just final big picture, I work around the world of infrastructure, like systems of transportation. And we think in the U.S., the legacy world that created your business was built around the highway system, right? The Eisenhower expansion in the 1950s, completed in the early 1990s, is now over. We're now moving from a build mentality in the world of DOTs, which create markets for your products, into a maintenance mentality. And DOTs, you talk about crisis thinking, they're already there. We don't build roads anymore, we maintain them. We might have a couple interchange projects. This is the most likely future. This is what we call the baseline future. The alternative future, the future that could happen, is a world where there's still going to be roads, there's still going to be vehicles. It will be the dominant form of transportation mode for the next century, right? But we will see an increase in the use of different types of modes, right? That multimodal world. Another alternative future is the shift from ownership of vehicles to access to vehicles, and the increase of fleets that are beyond government and business, so consumer-targeted fleets that are again designed for city and urban solutions. So this is the alternative future. If you think what's likely to happen, it's going to be, repair those highways, keep that singular focus on the car together. That's the most likely future. The alternative future, and the one that we do need to explore, is this world of different modes and different approaches. So moving into the next part of the presentation, I want to kind of unpack how people look at long-term change, and we're going to look at era-based change, and then we're going to focus on product and cultural strategies. So anyone recognize what's on the screen right here? It's called the S-curve. Anyone want to kind of give a shot at defining what it's used for? Please.
Everything grows and dies.
Everything grows and dies, right? So if we think particularly this is used with technology platforms, product platforms, service platforms, there are 3 stages from that birth to death, right? And if you go up on that axis, it's performance, adoption, performance, and then out on the bottom, it's time. Performance over time. And at the beginning of a technology, it's slow growth, right? It's like, oh yeah, I've heard about that computer thing in the 1970s. Why would anyone want a computer at home? What are they going to do with a computer? Calculations at home, right? And you underestimate the amount of change likely to happen. Oh yeah, I heard about those self-driving cars, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. You underestimate it. And then you hit a point of rapid change when things start to accelerate. And in the PC computer world, that was in the 1990s, right? Everyone gets a Dell. And you come into work, you're like, I get a computer. And they're like, I get a computer too. I'm going on this internet thing. And everyone's excited. And what do? Buy stock in technology companies because we've overestimated the amount of change that's likely to happen, right? We think, oh, Google's got a self-driving car. Everyone's going to be in a self-driving car in 2020, right? We overestimate the amount of change as we start to see signals strengthening. And then that usually falls flat. But then over time, the vision, maybe the full vision or a partial kind of, vision becomes true and real, and everyone gets it. And the last time you got a computer, you didn't come into the office and say you got a new computer, because you got 5 of them at home, right? And we reach a point where you're at a plateau, the technology is peaked in its efficiency, optimization, everyone's got it. And what do we do at this point? We begin to shift our thinking towards managing the decline. Managing the decline. This is what Microsoft did, right? And I'm a huge Microsoft guy, right? I'm a big believer. But they started managing the decline. And I think we could make a case that there is a threat that the automobile industry is at a point of managing the decline of the mechanical combustion engine and the car as we know it, right? So then what happens is there are signals that a new era is going to begin and there are disruptions. And the role of the futurist and other people is to help understand where are you on that curve, what are the signals of change, and how do you respond, right? What's the learning curve to get into that S-curve? So think about mobility, right? We didn't go from walking on the ground to walking on the moon by doing it faster, right? The history of society is based off of a series of era innovations in transportation. Animals and humans, boats, trains, cars, planes, and rockets. Now, what do we see from this? Eras do not go away. Eras do not go away. Even LP sales, right? If you're making LPs, records, you're selling a lot of LPs these days, right? You're selling a lot of them, right? But it's plateaued. You're still selling a lot, but it's plateaued, right? Because all those kids in Brooklyn are doing their DJ stuff. Eras do not go away, but they cease to become the source of dynamic innovation, right? Try to get excited about a new train or ship. We might get excited at, the biggest ship in the world, story, but, my mom doesn't. It's just another ship. The consumer doesn't. It's just another train. So what's next in the world of vehicles? Autonomous is the next kind of defining age. It's a variation of cars, but it's certainly an era. And then for bigger than that, it's the notion of suborbital, right? Richard Branson takes me up into, low Earth orbit. The Earth goes down. I can be like a tourist in space, or I can go from New York to Tokyo in 2 hours, right? So suborbital travel changes the global travel industry. So let's unpack it, right? What we want to do is kind of futurists is say, how do we know where we are in this curve? How do we anticipate when things are going to occur and avoid underestimating or overestimating the impact? So we all remember the DARPA Grand Challenge, right? Military says enough of these people getting killed in combat running supplies, right? More people are killed running food and fuel than in actual combat. We want self-driving supply chain platoons now. So a bunch of college kids get together and the professors, big vehicles, no one finishes the first course in 2004. 2 years later, they come back, LiDAR's gotten smaller, and then maybe 6 people finished. And they're like, okay, next year we're going to put you in an urban course and we're going to have people walking and we're going to throw cars at your way. And I think almost every team completed the course. And then the military went, okay, the program is now shut down. And then a couple weeks ago, you start to see news that Lockheed and other people are ready to start rolling this stuff out. That was the catalyst of this era, right? The idea has been around for a long time, but the signals started to strengthen. 2010, Google said we've got 500,000 miles. Ford brought an active assist to the Taurus, not a high-end car, right? A mainstream car. Group from Italy went from northern Italy to Shanghai, and with the exception of an afternoon in Moscow, those 2 vehicles went entirely autonomously. And now it's just, who does not have an autonomous vehicle shop, right? CEOs from Nissan and Daimler have said, we want to bring these to market in 2020, right? Autonomous or not, I don't care. They are going to come. I want to focus on the active assist. The active assist. That's the most practical focus. What I think is likely to happen is beginning in 2015 through 2025, your job is going to be to help create that higher order thinking culture of the captain. That person that steps into a vehicle and is checking all the systems and is looking at maps and is running tests and running simulations, not just steering and braking. Because what's going to go first when they're on the highway? The steering and braking, right? So that's the transition we think is likely to happen. I want to propose there are 2 phases. Phase 1, where and this isn't all about you. I really want to give you a big picture. Phase 1 is going to be largely DOT driven. They want to go down to 0 deaths. This vision of vision zero, whatever it is basically, let's have nobody die on highways. Enough of this, right? We're going to see a focus on assist to increase safety and then flow. And cities like Los Angeles and New York and all these other places are going to start to bring in legislation that says, starting in 2020, GM, Ford, Toyota, If you want to sell a car in this state, in this city, it's going to have to include active assist, because we want to be more competitive as a community that has better flow during the commuter hour. People are going to come to LA because the traffic doesn't suck anymore, right? That's the vision. What'd you say? Not going to happen.
The traffic.
So that's the first phase. And I think if you're looking at a product strategy, focus on the road platoon. Focus on the road platoon, right? That's the model. And the products are out there. So also during phase one, we're going to see more product integration strategies, aftermarket and OE developed, that are attempts to increase the driver decision point and the behavior, right? So progressive snapshot, which was that plug-in, you drive better, you pay lower rates. We see you braking hard, starting fast, your rates are going to go up. That was a few years back. That was the first kind of signal in the marketplace of behavioral applications for Captain Culture. Now we see startups like Automatic, also based in California, that are taking the degree of service innovation to beautiful places, right? Including engine and mechanical system diagnostics. So what is the framework for thinking about your products and the data that it produces, right? What is kind of the lens? This is the value chain of data in the world of business today. So up on the right or on the left is competitive advantage. Across is the complexity of the relationship that you have with the user, right? The least valuable form of data that a product can give is descriptive. Like, I am, an exhaust pipe. I am a grill on the front. I am a tire. That's very low value extraction there. Go up a level to predictive analytics, insights that say you should do, this could happen, we believe this could occur, right? And you can generate more value in the experience. Go up to the level of prescriptive thinking, where you actually say this is what you should do, and you've entered the phase and the area of maximum value creation and capture. So OEs are now starting to look at, this is what, OnStar and Sync, what these guys want to do. They want to create prescriptive solutions, recommendation-driven solutions. You should change your tire now. You should replace this part now. So as you think about your product development and your integration strategy, how do we get that information literally linked up in a way that it can be not just descriptive, what it is, but it's real-time kind of situation that allows for prescriptive solutions. So wrap up, Captain, where do I think it goes in phase two? I would say phase two is probably 2022, 2027, right? So go out in 8 to 10 years, and I think you're going to start to see signals. And I do think that the convergence of trends is going to be millennials, electric vehicles, and new form factors, 2- and 3-wheel vehicles. Now, this was science fiction, 10 years ago, hardy har, now we've all got them. And this 2-wheel, 3-wheel pod concept is like, oh my God, I knew the Futurist was going to bring up the pod, right? It's so predictable that he's going to bring up the pod, right? And we can sit here and go, that's never going to happen. Or we can look at millennials and imagine them living in a city and imagine them saying, I know this car is not going to crash. I know it. And if it does crash, I've got airbags in the entire cabin, right? And we imagine those millennials, they're not going to drive a car that's huge and big. They're going to be in these pods. I think this is your next golden era. I think this is your next period of rapid growth, because that is a high-performance vehicle. These aren't going to be golf carts. These are going to be fast-moving vehicles that are dynamically adjusting to the road. The gamer kids are going to be operating them, right? I think your products in the electric vehicle pod format could be phenomenal and highly priced with great margins. And I would love 10% on any new ideas. So that's the Captain era and where it comes in the transition towards active assist. I'm running out of time, so I just want to be real quick about the materials. Same story, right? The history of society is materials and the different eras, and we live in the silicon era. And what's next? What's next? Carbon materials, nanostructured materials, biomaterials. I think you guys are going to be better at building new material products than you are at apps, right? And I love the apps, but I think your natural orientation is going to be towards things. You're product people. Nanotechnology has been oversold and overhyped, right, for probably about a decade. I think it is still just a little further out from real-world product integration than kind of the next 3 years. But I want you to understand the transition that's occurring now. We're going from a phase of characterization of nanomaterials to a phase of functionalization. What does a carbon nanotube do? What is graphene? What does it do? To how do I integrate nanoparticles into my existing manufacturing process? We are going into this stage of functionalization of nanomaterials. I don't want to oversell this. This is not going to happen overnight. We're probably at about 2,000 products that have achieved kind of, in the US, federal approval to deal with kind of life cycle concerns, things of that nature. You go to your shows, I'm sure you see nano products, waterproofing and paints and coatings. Whether or not those things have nano products, I don't know, but it's also a buzzword, right? I think you guys as an industry want to consider developing a very sophisticated roadmap of nanomaterials and where they can enhance everything from sensors and the MEMS devices and lighting and coatings and paints and metals. And in particular, I would focus on graphene. Graphene is a single layer of carbon, and it's proving to be a wonder material that's easier to work with than the nanotubes themselves. So how do we as an industry imagine low-cost, high-performance materials that define our products and change how people use them? Right? So this is the last slide of the era, and then we're going to pull things together. This is the slide that you probably, there's going to be some hatred and resentment coming at me, right? I got no problem with a mechanical combustion engine, really. I do in a way, but it's mostly because of the design constraints that I think it leads or gives us in the car. It's too big and bulky, and I think that there's a design limitation associated with mechanical systems. If we're looking at the design aspect of a vehicle, electric platforms, I think, give us much better futures. So I would make a case that the mechanical combustion engine is at the peak of plateau. I don't think most people will argue against it. We might see some incremental innovations. We will. The combustion engine's probably going to be around for another 35 years. It's not going to go away, right? But we're at the point where we're managing the decline, and we're not able to squeak more and more value out of that product. As they say, all the cars are built by the same robot, right? What is after the mechanical engine? It's the electric platform, right? It's the electric motor. Batteries are one way to power electric motors, and battery vehicles will be around and they will grow, and I think they've got a market. But I will make the case that the strongest signals from the marketplace, from the automakers themselves, are that fuel cells, the conversion of fuel, molecule fuels, in a fuel cell is the long-term end game, simply because of the lower cost of mass, size, complexity, and the most important thing is that you can make money refueling a vehicle. You can't make money recharging it. There's no money in electrons, right? There's money in molecules. So when you think about electric vehicles, I think fuel-based fuel cells integrated with batteries is the platform, right? So where do we find the strategies? What are the strategies? I think we need to say we want the captain culture. Even if the first phase is going to be painful and we might not like it and we might think the apps are strange and they're not really our core, getting to phase 2, where those millennials are in 3-wheel pods, with super dynamic adjustment in their vehicles, getting to that stage of society, I think is the winning the marathon, not the sprint. And then I think we need to develop the roadmap and the materials, and then be able to have conversations of a post-mechanical age that say, you know what, electric vehicles could still be great for our business. There could be more mods on an electric vehicle than on a mechanical vehicle, right? So, there's the Blue Ocean, Red Ocean book that's been out for many years. The idea is a red ocean is lots of sharks, lots of blood in the water, right? What is that for your world? Globalization and the lowering of barriers to entry to making things. Are there more companies competing against you today than in the past 10 years? Yeah. Will there be more companies trying to eat your lunch in the next 10 years? Yeah, because the costs to get into the manufacturing game are now lower. You're in a red ocean, but that's where you make your money. That's what you know how to do. You need to have a strategy for that world, and you need to have a strategy for the uncertainty of the blue ocean, where there are no competition, there's no demand. We need to create the demand. So you're going to hear from a lot of great folks in a few minutes on the standards and the platforms. My personal my 2 cents is that we don't need to pick winners now. We need to place many bets. There's a lot of uncertainty. It's the wild west stage of development. But don't just sit back and wait for everything to be resolved, right? Standards are now being established in Europe, in the US. OEs are coming together with software providers, right? Make many bets, make many small bets. And also realize that not everything that's going to have an impact on the development of applications and change in the world of your product digital strategy are going to come from the automotive industry. Many of those standards and changes are likely to come from what we call the industrial internet or the Internet of Things world that have nothing to do with automotive products and devices and have everything to do with more industrial applications. So standards are not just being set in the automotive industry, also in industrial appliances. What do I think we can do in terms of a group action? There's a concept that's used in the world of forecasting, a platform called the Gartner Hype Cycle, and it basically says when something comes out big, it's got a lot of hype, we know that it never hits that hype in the short term. So how do we track when we're going to invest our time and invest our money in game-changing potential technologies? The Gartner Hype Cycle has 5 stages. It goes from trigger to inflated expectations, to the trough of disillusionment, to the peak of productivity. And every year, it's like Christmas time for Futurists. They release this Gartner Hype Cycle, and everyone's on Twitter and Facebook saying, oh, look, the Gartner Hype Cycle's out, and how could they put 3D printing there, and why isn't speech recognition up here? There's conversation. As an industry, where would we put all the automotive and aftermarket accessory products that have so much hype around them on the hype cycle? As a community, I think you could develop this type of framework that will allow you as a group to understand when things are going to actually hit their stride, right? So, 2 final things that I think are part of a cultural strategy, building off the gentleman in the back who was talking about kind of that maker movement. The design maker world, the maker movement has been around for about a decade, and it's just basically a group of people that wanted to get back to making physical things. And it's everything from fiber crochet to using 3D printers to design objects. It has now exploded across this country and the world. Libraries are building maker spaces, right? Communities are starting to build maker spaces. And I would make an argument that the maker movement right now is completely disconnected from the mobility automotive parts world. There are very few people in the maker world developing products for the vehicle. right? Very few compared to the other sectors. Why are people getting so excited? Because again, the barriers to entry to making things are so low. These people in Silicon Valley, they wanted $100,000 to make their little digital watch. They got $10 million. Kids went on Kickstarter from Minneapolis and they said, we want to develop this open source Wi-Fi chip. We need 10 grand. They got $500,000. I could show you 50 examples of these are Kickstarter projects, hoping you know what Kickstarter is, of young people and older people that are saying the tools to design stuff and the processes to fabricate it are so low, we need to get into this game. And many of them fail, right? But they're moving forward. And I think you have an opportunity to align the brand identity of the aftermarket world, of the mod mindset, of style, with this maker culture. I think you have got an opportunity there. What does that mean? I think you need to push out these tools. You've got that great tool downstairs that'll do the whole scanning, probably many of thousands of dollars. There are things that go on, they clip on your phone or tablet, and you can scan any 3D object or a 3D room. Google has a phone that's developing it that'll just be a feature on every phone within 3 years. The ability to scan objects by consumers. Do you say, scan our products, hack them up, change them? Get those tools out into the mainstream world. So what could it actually look like? I think some of your retail partners and maybe yourselves, you help to co-brand it. You establish maker spaces inside of that retail setting. Dad comes in with his son and daughter, and he's going to buy a new product, and the kids are like, oh, Dad, over here. And the next thing you know, they've spent the afternoon at the auto parts store designing and making objects. And your company says, here's 3D specs for this product. Go make it at home, kids. Color paint it, take it into school for show and tell. And then the teenagers start hacking that product and making it better. And then you say, great, our new business model is you design the product and we build it and make sure it's compliant and then ship it back to you. Right? There's a lot of radical things we can do, and there's a lot of just incremental things we can do. Final piece, final strategy is to think about aftermarket products, services, accessories, the style mod mindset for this world of fleet vehicles designed for consumers, right? These millennials are not owning cars at the same rate that you did. Some of them don't have a job, so that's why they can't afford the car. But many people are like, I don't want a car, it's not freedom, right? So what do? I go on to relay rides and I rent the car from the person that lives 2 blocks away, right? Or I go and I call up Uber and it picks me up within 5 minutes. Or I need a lift and I need a ride and I call Lyft. And the girls with the pink mustache in front of their car come and pick me up, which is the brand associated with Lyft. This is a fascinating transition in networked consumer fleets. Make those Uber cars, make those relay ride cards, make those cars used by Lyft modified. Bring that culture into the network consumer fleet world as a differentiation point, right? It's not just Uber's, map application, but Uber's got the best products that have been modified on that vehicle, right? So, you might not want the pink mustache in your product portfolio book, but there are other stuff within that vehicle that I think you could help socialize. All right, so we're done. This is the shock and awe look, right? This is I don't like autonomous cars, I don't like Captain Culture, I don't like electric cars, I don't like pink mustaches, right? It's a shock and awe. And I want to get you to this face. This is the face of my son. He's now 3.5, but when he was 6 months, he always had a smile on his face, right? And the mindset of this child at that point was, I don't understand stuff in the world and how it's changing, but I move towards it. I move towards it. I don't understand why you think electric cars are better than mechanical combustion engines, but I'm going to learn about that, right? We used to be curious about things we didn't understand and move towards it, and then at age 25, our brain gets solidified and we think, no, 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 no. If it contradicts my assumptions about the world and the market and the industry, then I don't like it. So we want you to move towards the things you don't understand. There are three types of people probably in this room. One is the futurists. They're like, I told you about this shit 2 years ago. I'm a futurist, right? And you're my people. I love you, right? Your job is to socialize futurist thinking. Come up with lists of people to follow, right? Come up with talks and articles to read. Put together newsletters on ideas shaping the industry. Work with, SEMA groups. Feed them more signals of change. That's your job. Most people here are probably thinking, I like this stuff, but I don't have time, I don't have bandwidth. Your job is to empower others, right? Your job is to empower your team to learn more. What do you do there? You lower barriers to piloting projects. You encourage exploration. So you can have a grand challenge as SEMA. You can have a grand challenge for a company. You can host something called a fail fair. Fail fairs are where you bring people together from this type of group, different organizations, and you have lots of liquor and pizza, and you have 10-minute presentations, 10 slides of your failures. Next person. 10 minutes, 10 slides. Next person. And you share the mistakes that you've made. That's called a fail fair. No crying when you present. And the final thing is, just thinking you're a skeptic. You're like, yeah. Mr. Futurist, I've heard this before. Where's my flying car? Where's my jetpack? Where's my paperless office? I've heard it all before. I could be wrong. Futurists have been wrong in the past. And if that's the case, what assumptions that I hold about the world that I shared with you today were wrong? That's your job, is to surface those assumptions. So I think we've got about 5 minutes if we need it for Q&A. I've put a copy of this presentation at this website. We'll also have it as a video online. Big thing is that I have 2 R's in my name. There's a Garry Golden who lives in Colombia. He's running from the British government. So make sure that you have 2 R's in any communication. But thank you all so much for your attention. Yep. Thank you.